Let me tell you about a specific kind of betrayal your body can inflict on you. It's not fear, it's not sadness, it's not the emotion you're actually feeling. It's tears when you need to be strong, crying when you need to be firm, your body expressing vulnerability at the exact moment you're trying to express power. If you cry when you're angry, you know this frustration intimately. You know what it's like to be furious, completely justified in your anger, ready to stand your ground, and then the tears start. Without permission, without reason, completely undermining everything you're trying to communicate. You know what it's like when someone wrongs you, and you need to confront them. You've prepared what to say, you're ready to be clear and direct, and then your voice cracks, your eyes fill, and suddenly you look weak when you feel anything but. You know the humiliation of crying during an argument when anger is what you're feeling. When people see the tears and think you're sad or hurt when actually you're enraged. When your emotional expression completely misrepresents your internal state. You know what it's like when people dismiss your anger because of the tears. When they think you're being dramatic. When they comfort you instead of hearing you. When the tears make them think you're fragile when you're actually fierce. And you've probably spent years hating this about yourself, feeling betrayed by your own body, wishing desperately that you could express anger the way it feels instead of the way it looks. Here's what I want you to understand. Crying, when angry, is not weakness. It's not emotional confusion. It's not your anger being less legitimate. It's a physiological response that has nothing to do with the validity of your feelings, a wiring difference that makes your body respond to intensity in ways you can't control. And if you've ever felt humiliated by tears that came when you needed strength, if you've ever been told to calm down when you were actually trying to be heard, if you've ever had your anger dismissed because your body expressed it as crying, stay here. Because what you're about to understand isn't just about angry tears, it's about why they happen, what they actually mean, and how to reclaim your anger even when your body seems determined to express it differently. Here's what's actually happening when you cry during anger. Your body is responding to emotional intensity, not emotional type. For most people, tears are associated with sadness, but tears aren't actually sad. They're a response to overwhelming emotion of any kind. Grief, yes, but also joy, frustration, relief, and anger. When emotion reaches a certain threshold of intensity, the body needs to release it. And for some people, that release comes through tears regardless of what the emotion actually is. Your autonomic nervous system, the part that controls involuntary responses, is activated by intense emotion. When you're angry, your body goes into a stress response. Heart rate increases, blood pressure rises, stress hormones flood your system. And for people who cry when angry, this stress response triggers the lacrimal system. The same system that produces tears during sadness gets activated by the physiological arousal of anger. It's not that your anger becomes sadness, it's that your body uses the same outlet for different intense emotions. The tears aren't reflecting what you feel, they're just reflecting that you feel intensely. Neuroscientists have found that people who cry when angry often have nervous systems that are more sensitive to emotional arousal. Their threshold for tears is lower across all emotions, but it becomes particularly problematic during anger, because anger is when they most need to appear strong. So the tears aren't weakness, they're just your body's automatic response to intensity, a response you didn't choose and can't easily control. Here's what often shapes this pattern. Sometimes it starts in childhood, in environments where anger wasn't allowed, where expressing anger directly led to punishment or rejection, where rage had to be suppressed. But emotions don't disappear when you suppress them, they just find other channels, and for children who couldn't express anger safely, tears became the outlet, the acceptable way to release what couldn't be released as anger. So crying became the conditioned response to feeling angry, not because the anger became sadness, but because crying was the only safe way to express intensity, and that pattern persists into adulthood. Even when you're in situations where anger is acceptable, your body still responds the way it learned to respond, with tears instead of rage, with crying instead of confrontation. Or maybe it developed differently. Maybe you grew up in an environment where any emotion, including anger, was overwhelming, where you learned that intense feeling of any kind is frightening, where emotional intensity itself became associated with tears. So now, when anger rises to a certain level, your body interprets it as overwhelming, and tears are your body's response to feeling overwhelmed, not because you can't handle the anger, but because your nervous system categorizes all intensity as crisis. Or maybe you're just someone whose tear ducts are physiologically more reactive. Higher levels of the hormone prolactin, more sensitive lacrimal glands, a shorter pathway from emotional arousal to tear production, in which case the tears have nothing to do with your emotional history or your ability to handle anger. They're just biology, an accident of how your body is constructed. Here's what it feels like to cry when you're angry. It's a betrayal, your body doing the opposite of what you need it to do. You're trying to be taken seriously, trying to stand your ground, trying to communicate that this matters, that you won't accept this treatment, that you have every right to be upset. And then the tears start, and immediately everything changes. The person you're confronting sees the tears and their response shifts. They might soften, thinking they've hurt you when actually you're just furious. They might dismiss you, thinking you're being overly emotional. They might use the tears against you, pointing to them as evidence that you're irrational. And you're stuck, because you can't stop the tears. You can't explain that you're not sad, you're angry, because the tears make that explanation seem defensive. You can't reclaim your power because your body's expressing vulnerability, so you feel helpless, which makes you angrier, which makes you cry harder, which makes you feel more helpless. It's a cycle that feeds itself, and all the while, the anger is still there, still valid, still justified, still demanding to be heard, but the tears are drowning it out, making it invisible, turning fury into what looks like fragility. Here's the social cost of crying when angry. People don't take you seriously. They can't. Because the tears send a message that contradicts your words. You say you're angry, but you look sad. You say this is unacceptable, but you look like you're breaking. You say you need this to change, but you look like you need comfort instead. And people respond to what they see, not what you say. So they treat you as if you're sad, as if you're hurt, as if you need soothing rather than hearing. They might apologize to make you feel better rather than because they understand they were wrong. They might try to comfort you rather than actually addressing the issue. They might wait for you to calm down rather than engaging with your anger directly. And this is maddening, because your anger isn't being met with acknowledgement. It's being met with dismissal, wrapped in kindness perhaps, but dismissal nonetheless. Women experience this particularly acutely, because women are already socialized to be nice, to avoid anger, to express displeasure gently. And when women do get angry, the tears that sometimes come with it reinforce every stereotype about female emotional instability. The tears become evidence that women are too emotional, too sensitive, unable to handle conflict rationally, when actually the tears have nothing to do with rationality. They're just a physical response to intensity that happens to correlate with being female because of hormonal differences. But the damage is done. The angry woman who cries is dismissed, told to calm down, treated like she's overreacting, her legitimate grievances buried under assumptions about her emotional control. Here's what people who cry when angry desperately need others to understand. The tears are not the message, the words are the message. When someone is telling you they're angry while also crying, believe the words, not the tears. The tears are just the wrapping. The anger is the content. They're not confused about what they're feeling. They're not actually sad. They're not being manipulative or dramatic. They're just angry in a body that expresses anger through tears. And they need you to engage with the anger, to hear what they're saying, to respond to their words, not their tears. Don't tell them to calm down. They're as calm as they're going to get while this issue remains unresolved. The tears aren't evidence of being out of control. They're just evidence of feeling intensely. Don't ask them what's wrong as if they're sad. They've already told you what's wrong. They're angry about something specific. Address that, not the tears. Don't comfort them unless they ask for comfort. They don't need soothing. They need acknowledgement. They need their anger to be taken seriously despite how their body's expressing it. The most respectful thing you can do is continue the conversation as if the tears aren't there. Let them cry and be angry simultaneously. Let them express both without making the tears the focus, because they're already fighting their own body. Don't make them fight your discomfort with their tears too. Here's the internal battle that happens when you cry during anger. You're trying to stop the tears while also trying to express your anger. And both of these things require energy. You're choosing words carefully, trying to communicate clearly, trying to stand your ground. And simultaneously, you're trying to control your voice so it doesn't crack, trying to blink back tears, trying to breathe in ways that might slow the crying. So you're only half present for the actual confrontation, because half of you is managing the physical response. And this splits your focus, makes you less effective, makes you more likely to forget what you wanted to say. And there's shame, enormous shame, because you know how this looks. You know people are seeing weakness when you feel strong. You know your credibility is being undermined by something you can't control. So you might apologise for the tears. I'm sorry, I'm not sad, I'm just angry, and I cry when I'm angry. As if you need to apologise for a physiological response, as if the tears are your fault. Or you might get angrier at yourself, furious that your body is betraying you, which adds a second layer of anger on top of the original anger. Now you're angry about the situation, and angry about crying about the situation. And this only makes the tears worse, because now the emotional intensity has doubled, and your body responds to that increased intensity with more tears. It's exhausting. Fighting the tears while fighting for yourself. Managing your body while managing the conflict. And all while knowing that the tears are making everything harder. Here's what people who cry when angry often develop: sophisticated anger suppression strategies, because they've learned that expressing anger directly comes with the cost of tears, so they find other ways. They become indirect, passive-aggressive, expressing anger through withdrawal rather than confrontation, through silence rather than words, through distance rather than engagement, not because they're cowardly, but because direct anger expression comes with such humiliation that avoiding it feels necessary. Or they write instead of speak, send emails or texts where the tears can't betray them, where their anger can be expressed purely through words without their body's interference. Or they wait, let the anger sit until it's less intense, until they can discuss it without the emotional peak that triggers tears. But this means addressing issues late, after the moment has passed, when the impact is diminished, or they avoid conflict altogether, swallow their anger, let things go, accept treatment they shouldn't accept, because the alternative, confronting someone while crying, feels worse than just enduring the situation. And this is tragic, because anger is important. It tells you when boundaries are violated, when you're being treated poorly, when something needs to change. Anger is the emotion that protects you, that demands better, that says this is not okay. But when expressing anger comes with such a high cost, many people who cry when angry just stop expressing it, and that means their boundaries erode, their needs go unmet, their anger turns inward instead of outward. Here's what anger tears actually reveal: not weakness, but the opposite, the intensity of how much you care, how much this matters, how deeply you're affected. People who don't care don't get angry, people who are indifferent don't cry. The tears are proof that you're invested, that this isn't casual to you, that you have strong feelings because you have strong values. The anger means something is important to you, and the tears mean that something important is being threatened or violated. Together, they're evidence of depth, of caring deeply enough to feel intensely, but society interprets them as weakness, as loss of control, as evidence that you can't handle conflict, and that interpretation needs to change. Because crying during anger isn't loss of control, it's intensity of feeling, and intensity isn't the same as instability. You can be crying and still be completely rational, still be making valid points, still be justified in your anger. The tears don't negate any of that, they just accompany it. Here's what I want you to know if you cry when you're angry. Your anger is valid, even with tears. Especially with tears. The tears don't make your anger less real, less important, less deserving of acknowledgement. They're just the physical form your anger takes. And that's okay. You don't need to apologise for them. You don't need to wait until you can express anger without tears. You don't need to suppress your anger to avoid the tears. You need to claim your anger, tears and all, own both. Say, this is how I express anger. I cry and I'm furious. Both are true simultaneously. So the next time you feel anger rising and you know the tears are coming, don't fight them. Don't waste your energy trying to stop what can't be stopped. Just let them fall. And keep speaking. Keep standing your ground. Keep demanding what you deserve. Cry and be angry. Cry and be strong. Cry and be absolutely clear that this is not acceptable and something needs to change. Your tears don't diminish your anger. They're just how your body processes intensity. And intensity is not weakness. It's proof that you care enough to feel deeply. So feel deeply, cry fully, and be angry without apology, because you have every right to all of it.